City of Saskatoon City Manager Jeff Jorgenson is with us today. We're going to talk about the Housing Accelerator Fund. Mr. Jorgenson, thanks so much for coming to the studio.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Randy.
I want to talk about something that's coming up at Council at the end of the month, the Housing Accelerator Fund, HAF. I'll let you maybe lead with what it is and why we're pursuing this.
No, for sure. The Housing Accelerator Fund is a federal program that's been launched. We're very fortunate, City Saskatoon, to have received $41.3 million in grant funding from the province, from the federal government. So that money will flow through the city, so from the federal government through the city to builders, nonprofits to incentivize housing, some market housing, some low-income housing or incentivized housing. And really the goal is to get about 940 new units, so over and above what we would typically build, 940 additional units of housing over a 3-year period. So it's a pretty aggressive program, and it comes with some changes, right? It's a large amount of money, but as a requirement, the federal government will be asking all cities who are receiving this type of funding to change some zoning regulations. So that's really what we're talking about right now actively at City Council. We've had some public engagement meetings to get feedback from the public, and the whole package is going to be going in front of City Council later this month on June 27th. Really what the zoning changes are about are changes to 4-unit dwellings throughout the city, plus 4-story and 6-story dwellings in certain areas of the city. And really what we're trying to do is open up that, what they call the missing middle housing, Randy. It's the most dense housing is those real high-rise apartments. And then of course the lowest density is typical single family home. And what this program is really intended to do is fill the middle, multiple units on a single site, or kind of a lower rise apartment, a 4- or 6-story development.
I think the key thing I took away from that was that it's not localized within Circle Drive. It's pretty much everywhere in the city. There's no real requirement to localize it.
The approach is, it's really about transit corridors. It's really a lot of the focus on in particular the multi-story buildings is on the transit corridors. So what we're proposing, and of course Council has not approved this, they will be considering it on June 27th, but what we're proposing is that right along transit corridors, so your major transit corridors, so streets like 22nd Street, College, Idlewild, Warman Road, those types of major arterials, right adjacent, we would allow up to 6 stories of development. So that's the most dense development, and you have to be basically right adjacent to those streets. It's kind of a tiered approach. If you can imagine those heavily trafficked streets, the highest buildings will be there, and then as you get out into the neighborhoods, it comes down into the lower density. So the next tier for the multi-units would be what we call the growth corridors, the transit development areas, and that's roughly about 250 meters from those main transit arterials. So in those areas, what we're proposing is that 4 stories would be allowed. So instead of the 6 stories right along the corridors, within 250 meters, it would be down to a maximum height of 4 stories. And the next level back, that 800 meter from a major corridor, we will allow the 4 stories, but only on major streets like collectors or arterials. So again, it's that tiered approach. The highest density, up to 6 stories right along those major transit corridors, then back down to 4 stories, and then on the major streets within 800 meters, only on the major streets.
So there's obviously a gear towards the densification around the corridors to support bus rapid transit. Eventually that will come into play. So there's the planning behind that. We've also heard some things about using public park spaces. Can you do some myth busting there that would satisfy some people that have concerns about parks?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question, Randy. And yeah, absolutely not. We're not proposing any development changes or development in city parks. Parks are the most precious jewels of the city. It contributes to quality of life of residents. Even if the administration tried to propose something, I'm certain the council wouldn't have any of it. So There is one site near the Lakewood Civic Center. It's a gravel parking lot. As part of the requirements of the federal government, they said look for any land that the city would own that could potentially be developed. So that is one site that we're contemplating looking at development, but it's not a park, it's a gravel parking lot adjacent to a civic center.
So I would imagine if people are concerned that they're going to look at the corridor and say, I'm 250 or 800 meters away from that, so if I'm looking for a little more of a bungalow or single family homes being away from the major corridor but close enough that I could take public transit is maybe what I'd look for if I was looking for a new home.
Yeah, I think one thing that is really, I think, a key factor for the program is even with the way the zoning is now in the city, people don't build to the very maximum density they can build. So one of the requirements of the federal government is, they call it 4-unit as of right zoning. So in addition to the multi-story changes that I talked about earlier, one of the requirements is that kind of citywide, if the lot is wide enough, you'll be able to build multiple units, so up to 4 units, dwelling units on a wide lot. But I think the reason I would say that is a subtle shift for Saskatoon, and every municipality is different. But you can do that right now. 50-foot lot, throughout the city, you can come in and subdivide. You can, in most areas of the city, you can put up to 6 dwellings actually on a lot. You subdivide the lot, conduct or construct a dwelling on each of the 2 that you subdivide, and add a garage suite, and actually put 3 on each of the 2 lots. So it's people don't do that. They still there's single family houses throughout the city. So this will be a very gradual shift. The major change for those low-rise developments are that instead of needing to subdivide, you wouldn't need to subdivide. You could put those units on an existing lot, and then within the transit areas, so once you get closer to the transit areas, we'll start to relax some of the building requirements. So right now we have a lot of massing requirements. You can only cover so much of the lot. You can only build so high. Yeah. As you get closer to those transit corridors, we'll start to relax those infill requirements. So yeah, a lot of detailed information, but it's very clearly laid out on the city's web page. So that's saskatoon.ca. If you search HAF or Housing Accelerator Fund, all of the information and details included in the various FAQ, frequently asked questions, and maps. It's quite easy to understand.
The parking situation, we hear about it everywhere in our culture here. Have parking requirements been eliminated, or are they proposed to be changed to accommodate the density in these areas?
Yeah, with parking, that's not going to happen in June. We'll bring forward more reports at our public hearing in July, but we are proposing to eliminate parking requirements for development. And I shouldn't say most cities, but a lot of cities have already done that. And it's something that the city was planning to look at regardless, but with the federal regulations and the interest in really incentivizing development and getting housing going for people to be able to afford housing, for developments that are close to transit, they just don't need the same parking requirement or the same amount of parking that people back in the neighborhoods might require. So we've heard that from developers for a long time, that the city's parking requirements are too onerous. We require too much parking to be built. And what a lot of cities have done is you basically leave it to market. Let market decide if they want to provide parking. That's an amenity that the builder would choose to build and include in the rent or the sale. And that's what we will be bringing forward in July, is to remove parking requirements and basically let the development community decide if they choose to include parking as part of the development.
What happens if I look at the Housing Accelerator Fund, the origins of it is, why is it needed, and why was this proposed as a solution?
Yeah, great question. It's we hear about housing affordability problems, and when you look at some of the numbers, it's really staggering. And over the last year, Saskatoon grew by about 14,000 people, which is
just in 1 year.
Just in 1 year,
Right.
and that's a good sized Saskatchewan city in itself. Just in our growth and over a single year, and we only had about 2,600 housing starts. So those numbers don't go together. You need a lot more than 2,600 housing starts to accommodate an annual growth rate of 14,000 people. So what are some of the barriers to new housing starts? Well, I think it's the interest rates have been a barrier. The inflationary costs have been a barrier. Some of the zoning things I think have been those add costs and bureaucracy or red tape to a process for a builder. So improving all these things, the federal government incentivizing housing, we will see affordability start to come more in line for people, whether they're looking to buy or rent. In a city where our population growth is far outpacing our housing starts, the result of that, we're seeing in some areas 1% vacancy. Well, that's getting pretty close to zero. So there just isn't housing available for people. So that's why the program is needed in Saskatoon and in so many communities across Canada.
I'm pleased to see that you're on it, and we hope to see this happen sooner rather than later. If people did want to find out more on their own, where would we look that up?
Yeah, it's on the city's website, so saskatoon.ca, and then if you search HAF or Housing Accelerator Fund, there's a number of tabs that you can look through all the information. As I said, there's a lot, but it's very clearly laid out. And I would say really key, if somebody's looking to really get a quick understanding of what it's all about, key on those frequently asked question documents, and you get up to speed really quickly.
Perfect. Thanks so much for coming down today.
Thank you very much for having me, Randy.
That's our show for today. I'd like to thank our guests, Frederick Bodnaris and Terry Patterson from Bodnaris Auctioneering, as well as City Manager Jeff Jorgenson. I'm your host, Randy Shabila. We'll see you next time on Connect.